They say some places never truly die, but linger, breathing forgotten histories and unspeakable terrors into the present. High in the remote, jagged embrace of the Colorado Rockies, a sprawling white monument to Edwardian luxury stands in stark defiance of the unforgiving wilderness. It is a place of breathtaking beauty, yet beneath its pristine facade lies an undercurrent of profound, unsettling stillness. For more than a century, guests have crossed its threshold seeking mountain air and quiet refuge, only to find themselves sharing the grand corridors with residents who checked in decades ago and simply refused to leave. The origins of this enduring sanctuary are rooted in a desperate race against mortality. In 1903, Freeland Oscar Stanley, a wealthy inventor from the East Coast, was diagnosed with severe tuberculosis. Doctors gave him mere months to live, prescribing the thin, crisp air of the western mountains as a final, futile comfort. Stanley traveled to the rugged valley of Estes Park, Colorado, seeking a quiet place to succumb to his illness. Instead, the harsh, pure environment miraculously restored his failing lungs, granting him a sudden, unexpected reprieve from the grave. Profoundly grateful for his survival, Stanley resolved to transform the isolated valley into a premier destination for high society. By 1909, the Stanley Hotel opened its doors, an architectural marvel of modern convenience dropped into the middle of an untamed frontier. It boasted electric lights, telephones, and ensuite bathrooms, drawing wealthy socialites, politicians, and industrial titans to its opulent parlors. Yet the creation of this isolated paradise required immense labor and sacrifice, binding the souls of its creators and caretakers to the very foundations of the sprawling estate. The deep devotion of its founders appears to have tethered them permanently to the property. Long after their mortal passing, the presence of F.O. Stanley and his wife, Flora, remains a constant reported reality for countless visitors and staff. The grand lobby and the billiards room, once the domain of the patriarch, are frequently the sites of sudden, inexplicable temperature drops and the distinct, lingering scent of his favored cigars. Apparitions of a distinguished man in period clothing have been witnessed observing the modern crowds, his watchful gaze ensuring his beloved establishment maintains its exacting standards. Flora Stanley's lingering attachment is perhaps even more intimately felt, echoing through the cavernous spaces of the music room. During her life, she was a dedicated pianist, filling the hotel with melodies that drifted over the sweeping verandas. Today, the antique Steinway piano she once cherished allegedly plays itself in the dead of night. Night watchmen and late-arriving guests have reported hearing the distinct, precise notes of classical compositions echoing down the empty hallways, only to find the music room entirely deserted upon investigation. Those who dare to approach the source of the phantom music often describe a sudden, chilling silence the moment they cross the threshold. The piano keys freeze, yet the air remains thick with the unmistakable fragrance of rose-water perfume, the very scent Flora was known to wear. Witnesses recount an overwhelming sense of being observed by a dignified, unseen hostess, a presence that is not inherently malicious, but fiercely territorial of her domain. It is as if the veil of time thins in that room, allowing the past to bleed seamlessly into the present. Beyond the elegant lingering of its founders, the building harbors memories of sudden violent trauma that shattered the illusion of a perfect retreat. In the early summer of 1911, a massive storm knocked out the property's newly installed power grid, forcing the staff to rely on an auxiliary acetylene gas lighting system. On the evening of June 25th, the chief housekeeper, Elizabeth Wilson, was tasked with entering room 217 to light the lamps. Unbeknownst to her, a slow, silent leak had filled the enclosed space with highly volatile gas. The moment Wilson struck a match, a catastrophic explosion tore through the second floor. The blast was so powerful, it instantly destroyed the immediate structure, sending the housekeeper plummeting through the collapsing floorboards into the dining room below. Miraculously, she survived the devastating fall, suffering broken ankles and severe burns, but escaping with her life. The hotel covered her medical expenses and she eventually returned to her duties, remaining a fiercely loyal employee until her natural death decades later. It seems her profound dedication, forged in the fires of that traumatic night, bound her spirit to the site of her near demise. Room 217 has since become the epicenter of the hotel's most intensely documented, specific, and often interactive haunting. Guests checking into the restored suite frequently report bizarre, meticulous disturbances. Suitcases left on the bed are inexplicably unpacked, with clothing neatly folded and stored in the antique dressers by unseen hands. Shoes left scattered across the floor are found perfectly aligned by the door upon the guest's return. Yet the spectral housekeeper's attentions are not always entirely welcoming. According to numerous accounts, unmarried couples sharing the bed have experienced a sudden, chilling force pushing between them in the middle of the night. Some have awoken to find their blankets violently yanked away, or felt an invisible icy barrier separating them, as if a strict Edwardian moral code is still being rigidly enforced from beyond the grave. The lingering presence in the room is highly protective, maintaining a perpetual vigil over the space that nearly claimed her life. The dense, oppressive atmosphere of this particular suite eventually drew the attention of a man seeking the perfect setting for a tale of isolation and madness. In late autumn of 1974, a young, then struggling author named Stephen King arrived at the property with his wife. They were the final guests of the season, checking in just as the hotel was shutting down for the harsh winter months. The sprawling, empty corridors, devoid of life and echoing with the howling mountain winds, provided a deeply unsettling backdrop for their solitary stay. King and his wife were booked into the notorious room 217. Wandering the deserted halls, dining alone in the massive, echoing Colorado room, the author absorbed the profound, heavy silence of the isolated structure. That night, King experienced a vivid, terrifying nightmare of his young son being chased down the hotel's long, patterned corridors by a sentient fire hose. He awoke in a cold sweat, stepped out onto the balcony to smoke a cigarette, and realized the immense, predatory energy of the building was practically begging to be immortalized. The haunting isolation of that single night birthed the foundational concept for his masterpiece, The Shining. While the fictional Overlook Hotel was born from King's imagination, its sinister, psychological weight was directly extracted from the very real, palpable dread that saturates the historic property. The novel and subsequent film cemented the location's dark reputation in the global consciousness, transforming it from a faded mountain resort into a legendary pilgrimage site for those seeking a brush with the macabre. But the true nature of the lingering shadows extends far beyond the cinematic fiction that made it famous. While pop culture focuses on malevolent, ancient evils, the actual reported phenomena within the walls are often more tragic, poignant, and deeply human. To understand the full scope of the haunting, one must ascend past the grand suites and venture into the claustrophobic, often overlooked spaces of the upper levels. The fourth floor of the main building was originally designed as a massive, open attic space. During the hotel's early decades, this cavernous, uninsulated area served as the primary lodging for female employees, traveling nannies, and the young children of the wealthy guests. It was a bustling, hidden world of domestic labor and youthful energy, segregated from the refined elegance of the floors below. Over time, the space was partitioned into cramped guest rooms, but the echoes of its original inhabitants never truly faded away. Today, the fourth floor is widely considered the most actively disturbed area of the entire estate. Long after midnight, when the building should be cloaked in silence, guests and staff routinely report the distinct, unmistakable sounds of children playing in the narrow hallways. The rapid patter of small, invisible feet running back and forth, accompanied by muffled giggles and the sharp, startling sound of glass marbles rolling across the wooden floorboards, shatters the quiet of the night. Those who step out of their rooms to investigate the commotion are consistently met with empty, dimly lit corridors. Yet, the physical evidence of these spectral games often remains. Small handprints are frequently found pressed against the insides of high windows, far above the reach of any living child. Housekeeping staff report finding closet doors mysteriously unlatched, and the distinct impression of small bodies resting on freshly made beds, as if an unseen nursery is perpetually active just beyond the edge of our perception. The question of why so many youthful spirits would remain trapped in a place of luxury is deeply unsettling. There are no historical records of mass tragedies or horrific accidents involving children on the property, making their persistent, playful manifestations a profound mystery. It is possible that the hotel simply represents a moment of pure, unadulterated joy in their short lives, a golden summer they refuse to leave behind. Or perhaps the sheer volume of residual energy left by thousands of passing lives has permanently stained the environment. This accumulation of spiritual residue is not confined to the main building. A short walk across the grounds sits the concert hall, a separate, equally imposing structure gifted by F.O. Stanley to his beloved Flora. Built to host grand theatrical performances and classical concerts, the hall features a sprawling auditorium, a lower-level basement, and a dark, labyrinthine backstage area. It is here that the nature of the hauntings takes a distinctly heavier, more oppressive turn. The backstage area of the concert hall is allegedly guarded by the spirit of a former handyman known as Paul. According to local lore, Paul was a strict, dedicated worker who suffered a fatal heart attack while shoveling snow outside the hall. In death, he has apparently maintained his rigid authority over the premises. Visitors exploring the backstage corridors often report hearing heavy, booted footsteps pacing the catwalks above, followed by a gruff, disembodied voice demanding that they leave the area immediately. Encounters with Paul are rarely subtle. Construction crews attempting to renovate the aging structure have experienced tools being violently thrown across the room, ladders suddenly collapsing, and an overwhelming, suffocating pressure settling onto their chests. The entity seems deeply resentful of any changes made to his domain, actively interfering with those who fail to show the proper respect. His lingering fury stands in stark contrast to the elegant, passive spirits of the main hotel, showcasing a darker, more volatile spectrum of paranormal activity. Beneath the stage, the basement of the concert hall harbors an entirely different, heartbreaking presence. The spirit of a young woman, often referred to as Lucy, is said to wander the subterranean tunnels. Legend suggests she was a runaway who sought shelter from the freezing mountain winter in the hotel's warm basement, only to perish from exposure before she could be discovered. Her apparition is frequently described as a shadowy figure in a tattered dress, darting just out of sight in the peripheral vision of those who venture below. Lucy's haunting is characterized by a desperate, lingering need for connection. Investigators and staff have reported hearing soft, disembodied weeping echoing from the darkest corners of the basement. When spoken to, the entity is known to interact with flashlights, turning them on and off in response to questions, as if reaching out from the terrifying void of her final, lonely moments. The sorrow that permeates the lower levels serves as a grim reminder that not all who checked into the grand estate did so for leisure. The sheer variety of these reported phenomena forces a re-evaluation of what it means for a place to remain haunted. The real ghost stories of this mountain retreat are not merely tales of residual energy or tragic loops playing out in the dark. They suggest a complex, layered ecosystem of spirits, some bound by duty, some by sudden trauma, and others perhaps by a conscious choice to linger in a place of former glory. The architecture itself seems to act as a massive, intricate battery, charging off the emotions of the living and sustaining the dead. Today, the sprawling white facade continues to dominate the valley, looking much as it did over a century ago. It stands as a dual monument, one to the triumph of early 20th century ambition, and another to the terrifying fragility of the human soul. The Stanley Hotel remains a permanent threshold, a place where the veil between eras is hopelessly torn. For those who walk its long, silent corridors, the chilling realization sets in that they are never truly alone, forever sharing the space with the unseen guests who have claimed it for eternity.